The courtroom was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of Judge Hawthorne's gavel against the wooden podium. The man was known for his sharp tongue, his impatience, and his utter disdain for nonsense. "Well, well," he said, eyeing the defendant, a lanky, disheveled teenager who sat hunched over, eyes glued to the floor. "Looks like we have another troublemaker who thinks he can outsmart the law. What's your name, kid?" The boy remained silent. The judge sighed dramatically. "Oh, so now you're mute? Wonderful. Just what we need. A criminal who refuses to speak." Whispers rippled through the room. The prosecution smirked. The boy's court-appointed attorney shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Your Honor, my client, I don't need excuses," the judge interrupted. "What did he do?" The prosecutor stepped forward, flipping through a thick file. "The defendant, Nathaniel Reed, is charged with multiple counts of trespassing, unauthorized access to government property, and," she paused, looking up, "hacking into a secure federal database." The room tensed. Even the judge blinked. "You mean to tell me this kid," Hawthorne gestured at Nathaniel dismissively, "broke into a federal database?" The prosecutor nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. He gained access to classified information regarding—" "Stop." The judge held up a hand. "What exactly did he do with this so-called classified information?" The prosecutor hesitated. "Well," the judge pressed, "he corrected it," she admitted reluctantly. Silence. The judge's brows furrowed. "What?" Nathaniel still hadn't spoken a word. He simply sat there, unmoving, unreadable. The prosecutor cleared her throat. The defendant infiltrated a highly secure system belonging to the Department of Defense. However, instead of stealing or leaking data, he modified certain files. Modified? The judge leaned forward. "Explain." "He found an error in the missile defense system's targeting software," she said, shifting uncomfortably. According to cybersecurity experts, his correction actually prevented a potential system malfunction that could have resulted in a catastrophic misfire. A voice finished. It was Nathaniel. For the first time since the trial began, the boy spoke. His voice was quiet but firm, carrying an undeniable weight. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Judge Hawthorne turned his full attention to Nathaniel, scrutinizing him with newfound curiosity. "You're saying the United States government had a flaw in its system, and you, what, out of the kindness of your heart, decided to fix it?" Nathaniel lifted his head slightly, meeting the judge's gaze. "Yes." A murmur swept through the courtroom. The judge scoffed. "And why should I believe that?" Nathaniel exhaled, his expression still unreadable. "Because if I wanted to cause harm, Your Honor, I wouldn't have left a trace." The judge's face hardened. "That sounds like a threat." "It's a fact," Nathaniel corrected. "Whoever wrote the original code made a mistake. A big one. I saw it, I fixed it, and I left a note explaining how to prevent it from happening again." "You left a note?" The prosecutor's voice wavered slightly. Nathaniel nodded. "Yes, I even signed it." The judge turned back to the prosecutor. "And how did they catch him?" The woman hesitated again. "We didn't, Your Honor. He turned himself in." The judge's mouth tightened. His gavel, which had been his weapon of impatience minutes earlier, now rested idle in his grip. "Let me get this straight," he said slowly. "This kid breaks into one of the most secure networks in the country, finds a fatal flaw, fixes it, leaves a note, and then walks into a police station to confess." "Correct," the prosecutor admitted. The judge turned to Nathaniel. "Why?" Nathaniel shrugged. "Because it was the right thing to do." Silence stretched in the courtroom like an invisible force, then laughter. Judge Hawthorne chuckled. Then the chuckle turned into a full-blown laugh. He shook his head, rubbing his temples as if he had just heard the most absurd joke of his life. "You expect me to believe," he said between laughs, "that some kid, some quiet, scruffy, hoodie-wearing teenager, outsmarted the best minds in national security, fixed their mess, and then turned himself in because he just had to do the right thing?" Nathaniel tilted his head slightly. "Yes." The laughter stopped. Judge Hawthorne's smile faded because something in the boy's gaze was unsettling, not threatening, not cocky, just unwavering. The judge studied him for a long moment before leaning back in his chair. He exhaled. "This case is a mess," he muttered. The prosecutor shifted. "Your Honor, despite the unusual circumstances, the defendant still committed multiple felonies." "Felonies?" Nathaniel interrupted. The prosecutor turned to him. Nathaniel's expression remained calm, but there was a sharpness to his tone now. "Do you know how many people reviewed that code before I did?" The prosecutor hesitated. Nathaniel continued, his voice gaining momentum. "Do you know how many trained professionals, people with degrees, experience, and high-level clearance, missed that mistake? And yet, I caught it." A heavy pause. "If I hadn't," Nathaniel said, "what do you think would have happened?" The prosecutor swallowed hard. She didn't have an answer. The judge leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench. "Kid, I don't know whether to throw you in prison or give you a medal." Nathaniel smirked. "I hear that a lot." Another ripple of whispers. The judge rubbed his temples again, deep in thought. Then he straightened. "Here's what we're going to do," he announced. "I'm ordering an independent cybersecurity panel to analyze this kid's claims. If he's lying, he gets the maximum sentence." He turned to Nathaniel. "But if you're telling the truth," he exhaled sharply, "I don't even know what to do with you." Nathaniel met his gaze with quiet confidence. "Just don't waste my time with community service." The judge chuckled again. "Cocky. I like it." He banged the gavel. "Court is adjourned." And just like that, the case that started with a laughing judge and a silent boy had turned into something much, much bigger. As the courtroom emptied, the buzz of conversation grew louder. Reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads, whispering about the quiet teen who had just humiliated the system from within. Nathaniel stood up, his hands still cuffed, but his composure unshaken. His court-appointed attorney, Mr. Lawson, leaned in. "Kid, that was something else. You really know how to make an entrance." Nathaniel glanced sideways at him. "I wasn't trying to." Lawson chuckled nervously. "Well, you just made national headlines. The judge ordered an independent review. That means you've got about a week before they either clear you or bury you." Nathaniel's eyes darkened for a moment, but he said nothing. Two officers approached to escort him back to the holding cells. As they walked him down the corridor, one of the guards muttered under his breath, "I still can't believe it. You really did all that?" Nathaniel didn't respond. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving him alone in the small, sterile cell. He sat down on the narrow cot, staring at the wall as if calculating something in his head. But the story was far from over. 5 days later, the independent cybersecurity panel had finished their review, sooner than anyone expected. The judge called an emergency session, which was highly unusual. Nathaniel sat in his place once again, but this time the atmosphere was electric. Something had shifted. Judge Hawthorne entered, but the mocking tone from before was gone. He looked tense. He sat down, shuffled some papers, then peered over his glasses at Nathaniel. "I read the report," he began, his voice heavier. "And I have to say, I am..." He paused, as if the words physically pained him. "Astounded." The courtroom was silent, every pair of eyes glued to Nathaniel. The panel confirmed that the flaw you found in the missile defense system was not only real, but catastrophic. If left unchecked, it could have led to a global incident. Gasps echoed through the room. Nathaniel remained calm, almost indifferent. The judge continued. They also found that the correction you implemented was so sophisticated that none of their top engineers could have done it as cleanly. He leaned forward. So, I ask you again, who are you really? Nathaniel hesitated, then finally spoke. I'm no one special. The judge slammed his hand on the bench. Don't give me that. You just saved millions of lives and outsmarted the government. That's not no one special. Nathaniel finally met his eyes, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. I taught myself. I've been coding since I was 10. The courtroom was still, the weight of his words sinking in. The prosecutor stood up abruptly. Your Honor, regardless of his intentions, Nathaniel still broke multiple laws. We can't ignore that. Judge Hawthorne sighed. You're right, but we also can't ignore that he did something none of us could. He looked at Nathaniel. You didn't just stumble into that system. You bypassed military-grade encryption, fixed an error that could have started a war, and then, what? You turned yourself in because you felt bad. Nathaniel didn't blink. Because I knew they'd never believe it wasn't a threat unless I explained it myself. The judge leaned back, thinking. Then, something unexpected happened. The courtroom doors opened and two men in dark suits walked in. They looked official. Too official. One flashed a badge. Agent Keller, NSA. The taller one announced. We need to speak with the defendant. The judge frowned. This is a court of law, Agent Keller. Whatever business you have can wait. I'm afraid it can't. The agent's voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Everyone's eyes turned to Nathaniel. Agent Keller walked up to the defendant's table, pulling out a file. Nathaniel Reed, we've reviewed your actions extensively. While what you did was illegal, it also revealed critical flaws in our national security systems. Flaws that, frankly, we can't afford to ignore. The judge raised an eyebrow. Are you saying what I think you're saying? The agent nodded. We want to offer Nathaniel a deal, full immunity, in exchange for his skills. The courtroom erupted into chaos. The prosecutor shouted, the judge banged his gavel repeatedly, but Nathaniel just sat there, emotionless. Wait, 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 the judge bellowed over the noise. You want to recruit him? Agent Keller's eyes narrowed. We'd rather have him with us than against us. The judge looked at Nathaniel, trying to gauge his reaction. What do you say, kid? Work for the government or risk prison? For the first time, Nathaniel showed a flicker of emotion, something between disbelief and amusement. That's my choice? He asked quietly. The judge nodded. Nathaniel leaned forward. Then I have one condition. The room stilled again. Agent Keller hesitated. Which is? Nathaniel's eyes gleamed. I work alone. No handlers, no supervisors. I pick my projects. The agent glanced at his partner. After a tense pause, he nodded. Agreed. Judge Hawthorne sighed, rubbing his temples. I can't believe I'm about to say this. But case dismissed. The gavel slammed down one final time. Outside the courthouse, Nathaniel walked out into the blinding sun, flanked by Agent Keller. Reporters shouted his name, cameras flashed, but Nathaniel ignored them all. You're a strange kid, Agent Keller muttered. Nathaniel smirked slightly. You have no idea. As they reached the waiting black SUV, Keller opened the door. Welcome to the real game, Nathaniel. Nathaniel paused, glancing up at the clear blue sky before slipping into the car. The door shut. And just like that, the quiet kid the world had mocked was now its most valuable asset, hidden in plain sight. 6 months later. A dark room illuminated only by the soft glow of multiple computer monitors. Lines of complex code scrolled endlessly across the screens, accompanied by the rhythmic clicking of a keyboard. Nathaniel sat in the center, his eyes locked on the data flooding in, hands moving with inhuman precision. He wasn't the same kid who had walked into that courtroom months ago. Something had changed, hardened. On one screen, a cyber attack attempt was unfolding in real time. Someone was trying to breach a U.S. military satellite system. Nathaniel's fingers flew across the keyboard, erecting digital walls, diverting malicious code, and embedding counterhacks before the attacker even realized they'd been caught. Within seconds, the breach was neutralized. Nathaniel leaned back, sighing. It was almost too easy now. A message popped up on one of the screens. Agent Keller. Another save. That's the third this week. You sure you're okay with all this? Nathaniel hesitated before typing back. Nathaniel. Doesn't really matter, does it? No reply came. He closed the chat window. He glanced at a different monitor showing a live satellite feed. Somewhere, far away, people were walking, laughing, living their normal lives, oblivious to the threats that lurked in the shadows, the silent wars fought behind screens. But for Nathaniel, this was normal now. Suddenly, an alert blared, a red box flashing across his screen. Intrusion detected. Nathaniel's heart skipped. This wasn't just any breach. Someone had hacked his system. He immediately dove into the code, tracing the intruder's path. But whoever it was, they were good. Very good. Lines of taunting messages began to appear. Nice work, kid, but you're not the only genius out here. Nathaniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard, adrenaline surging. This was no ordinary hacker. He typed back, "Who are you?" The response came almost instantly. "A friend, or maybe not. Depends on you." The cursor blinked, waiting. "You think you're safe working for them? You're not. They're using you, Nathaniel, just like they use everyone." His pulse quickened. How did this person know so much? "What do you want?" Nathaniel typed. The reply was short and chilling. "The truth. And I'm going to show you." Before Nathaniel could respond, his screens flickered, and the connection was severed. The room went eerily quiet. He sat there, breathing heavily, staring at his blank monitors. For the first time in months, he felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Had he been played all along? Was he just a pawn in a bigger game? His mind raced with possibilities. The government, the NSA, even Agent Keller. Who could he trust? But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Nathaniel cracked his knuckles and powered up his system again, determination flooding back. Whoever this new player was, they had just made it personal. And this time, he would be the one hunting. The quiet kid no one had noticed was now the most dangerous force in the cyber world. But even geniuses can't outrun their past forever. Fade to black. What would you have done in Nathaniel's place? Would you have taken the government's deal or walked away? And who do you think that mystery hacker was at the end? Drop your theories in the comments below. I'm excited to see what you think. If you enjoyed this story and want more twists and turns like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next dramatic tale. Thanks for watching.